I'm going.
I forgot to.
Yes, she's going to record. I'm going to click. Got it.
Got it.
Okay. I noticed that the time said 6 till 7:30. It's probably just going to be an hour, so I hope that suits everyone okay, and that everybody already voted who's going to vote. So we're going to talk about teas and infusions tonight. I work with an organization called Links for Greener Learning, which works with newcomers, the schools, a bunch of different groups in the communities to help bridge knowledge to get people working with earth-based products. So growing their own food. They have a lot of community gardens throughout the Niagara region. So for folks that don't have access to a plot of land, like if your backyard is small or if you live in an apartment building, the organization Links for Greener Learning here would be able to hook you up with a plot in a community garden. So today I thought we'd talk about teas and infusions because a lot of people grow herbs and then don't really know what to do with them after that, or don't see it all the way through, because they are just beautiful on their own to watch grow. I'm going to share my screen. Very good. And can you see my PowerPoint right now, Annie? PowerPoint?
Yes, I can see it. Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, so teas and infusions. And then another organization I'm affiliated with is the Niagara Community Garden Network, and they are linked up with United Way. So community gardens have become more sustainable, and it's a great way to build community, meet other gardeners, get in touch with these social hubs and share recipes and fun things to grow. So tonight we'll talk about the difference between teas and infusions. I'm just going to mute. Maybe Dick, is that your mic that's on? I can't really see the bottom of my screen. Let's see. I'm going to mute. Pin, no. Okay. So we'll talk about the difference between a tea and an infusion. Do you mind just muting everyone else that's on the call, Annie? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know if it's. I think it.
Okay, we should be good now. Are you good? Can you hear better?
Yes, now we are good. Perfect. Thank you.
You too.
It's okay. So we'll talk about the difference between a tea and infusion. If anyone has questions along the way, you can either type them in the chat, or you can just pop your audio on and ask it in real time. We'll be very casual about questions and answers. And then we're going to get to know which herbs work best as teas and which ones would be better for infusions. And then I'll walk you through how to blend a tea, craft the recipe, and make teas, and how to make an infusion. And then I'll demo both of those. So teas are a really small amount of herbs steeped for a short period of time. And that's very different from an infusion that you'll see later. When you're planning to have a tea experience, to drink a cup of tea, generally speaking, when I offer people tea, they sort of have a very short algorithm in their head. They think, do I need caffeine or don't I need caffeine? And so it might be just, I'll take black tea, green tea, or herbal tea. So we're just hoping to broaden that herbal category and open ourselves up to so many more options other than, do I want to have caffeine or don't I want caffeine? So the tea experience, the invitation for tea, really invites you to check in with yourself, because you are looking to feel a particular way. And so you're checking in, I'm tired, I'm feeling kind of down. maybe I want an uplifting tea. So you'll see lots of tea blends out there called bliss tea or relax tea. So we're really looking to check in with ourselves and choose a tea that's suited for the present moment. So when you're crafting your teas, you're going to want a very particular smell from the volatile oils that get released from the boiling water connecting to the dried plant. Let me see if I can minimize. Oh, perfect. And so that's going to awaken your senses already. The color is also very important. It's nice to be able to see the beautiful colors of the plants that are dissolving into the hot water. A lot of the color range goes into the orange-red sphere once you get into the herbs. And the effect of the tea, you want to check in. Does this accomplish what you want it to? Do you want to be relaxed or do you want to be stimulated? Do you want something that reminds you of a place or event? Like maybe you've got a little bit of cedar in there that captures something about time in the woods. And then you want to go for a particular taste. Maybe you want something more bitter. Maybe you want something sweet. Maybe something a little bit more sour. But again, it's nice to weave all of these into one cup of tea. So one herb that most people know and love, and when they think herbal tea, you might think chamomile tea. And then you think, no, I don't want chamomile tea because I don't want to be sleepy. So it is a member of the daisy family, and another word for it is the ground apple. And because it has this really appley scent to it and an apple-like flavor. And it's good for so many things, including hay fever and menstrual disorders, good for the gut, inflammation, and of course, insomnia. So most people think of chamomile when they have insomnia to try to treat the insomnia. And again, I just wanted to say the disclaimer that always check with your healthcare professional before using herbs or herbal products. And any advice that I give is just very general, not meant to be making prescriptions for you. And then topically, you can use chamomile as well because it's good for inflammation, and often you'll see it in combination with calendula. And it grows very easily, chamomile does. And as soon as those white petals lie flat and that nice yellow middle part is pointing upwards, you can just clip all the flower tips off and dry them into something like this. So because it's a flower, let's see, because it's a flower, you'll want something like this. That's a screen setup that you can lay a whole bunch of flowers in that has some mesh work there and giving lots of air and at the same time protecting the flowers from getting dust on them. Okay, so this one I just got from Lee Valley. It's got eight of these segments tall, and you can just hang it in outside or inside. And you can dry so many herbs on it. And they also have a smaller version of that as well. That's just 4 tiers. And that setup is really good for flowers because you can't hang the flowers to dry, of course. So it's nice to put them on a screen. Then we have, I'm just going to start my kettle here. We have lavender. So lavender's in the mint family. It's really a wonderful smell. Most people love the smell of lavender. Very calming, supports your digestion and lung health and your immune system. So lavender also grows very easily, and you would just clip off about an inch below where the purple flowers begin. And you could dry those also in the rack that I showed you, or you could put a little string around that 1-inch piece and hang them upside down. But they dry up really nicely. And then I would run my fingers along the stem once it's dry and pop all the little flowers into a bowl. And that's what I would use for tea. everybody loves mint. So lots of different kinds of mint. Everyone seems to have success growing mint. And then it does take over your garden, so you want to make sure you grow it in a container. But you can eat mint fresh, or you can dry it up and put it in a tea. You can use any of these plants fresh as well. So a really nice uplifting effect there. And I'm going to show you. Let's switch my camera. Okay. So here is some mint that I just harvested today, just so I had some. And this is a spearmint, and it's already starting to get a little bit floppy. But what I would usually do for my mint is bundle it and get a little string and hang that upside down. And here you can see in the spring, this is a bundle of mint that I already harvested and dried up. And then once it's really dry, I would usually get together with some friends and we would pull it all off the stems. So you just start crushing the leaves so that it falls off the stems. And I would do that, you know, until all the leaves are off. So that's already a nice, and you, depending on how much mint tea you like, you would dry up as much as you need. But you'll find the more you drink herbal teas, the more you need each year. So yeah, so that's a nice consistency. If I was giving it as a gift, I might powder it down even more so that it looks a little bit more beautiful. But that's it. There you go. Then if I would have just a straight up mint tea, I could just do a teaspoon of this dried mint into a cup of boiling water. So really good for digestion. The thing about mint is you want to be mindful if you have any reflux at all, it does tend to aggravate the GERD or the reflux. So something to be mindful of. Lemon balm is also in the mint family, and it is a really lovely, lovely plant. It smells so divine, and it makes a really nice tea. Really good for anxiety and depression and to promote sleep. So you can see a lot of these herbs are relaxing. So you could, very nice allies to the stimulated go pace of the day. So I'm going to switch back over to show you lemon balm. So this is some lemon balm that I harvested today. And you can see it looks a lot like mint. It's in the same family, but you'll know right away off the smell that it's lemon balm. It is very, very lemony. And the aroma of lemon balm is amazing. So this is what my lemon balm happens to look like right now in the fall. In the spring, it grew quite tall. So here is my lemon balm, and it started to flower. That's okay. When lemon balm starts to flower, that means there's the highest amount of volatile oils are in the leaves. So it's actually a great time to clip your lemon balm. And then to dry it, this one I happen to have an elastic, so that's what I use, but I would put a piece of string around this and hang it upside down. This has been hanging since the spring because I've been neglectful of stripping them off the stems. But, you know, once winter opens up and you have some more time, I would do the same thing for this as I did for my mint. I'd strip all the leaves off the stalk, and then I'd have my winter supply of lemon balm. Holy basil is another really easy to grow herb and a wonderful ally for anxiety and depression and for stress management. And the smell is amazing, amazing, amazing. I have some seeds that I'm going to donate to the seed library as soon as that gets up and running. Here you can see, so this is Tulsi, also known as holy basil. And it's got beautiful flowers here. And then some of it's already starting to go to seed, but that's okay. So I would just bundle this up and hang it upside down and do the same as I did for my lemon balm and my mint. Let it dry and then strip it off. If it's just for personal use, there's nothing wrong with the stems. They can be steeped into your tea as well. So I could also just use scissors and chop it up into bits. No problem. But most people like the aesthetics of having a nice uniform leafy mix. For example, I ordered some lemon balm from a place in Toronto, and this is the way it came, right? It's dried up nicely and put into a uniform consistency. So blending our teas. This is a very general structure for blending teas. Say you want to make a gift for someone for Christmas. I always think it's nice if you live in Welland to make some sort of a nice Rose City tea blend. And it's a nice gift for people who don't live in Welland or do. So there's lots of different recipes for teas. You don't have to stick to this, but if you don't have any experience at all of blending teas, this is a really great start. So we just want to put in one flowering note. And this could be violet flowers, chamomile, dandelion, calendula, lavender, and any flower. And then 2 parts, so twice the amount of the body. And this is sort of the staple or the root of the tea, the body of the tea. It ties everything together. Dried red raspberry leaves work really well here. Dried nettles work well too. Some people have mixed feelings about growing nettles in their garden. You could always keep it in a pot and make sure it's tucked away so kids don't brush up against it and get the sting of a nettle. Then you want to put in 1 fruity part, and you literally could dehydrate fruit. Put it in your dehydrator, peaches, apples, lemon, any fruits that you want, and then make it into little chunks and add that to your tea blend as well. And then if you are going to use real fruit, instead of going 1 part, just go a half a part. Most people enjoy rose hips. There's a lot of vitamin C in your rose hips. You could also use hibiscus flowers, which are sweet and lemony and delicious. And then if it's summertime, you can also put a cooling herb in there, like a mint or a lemon balm, something that's nice and cool. In the winter months, maybe you want to put something warm in there. Maybe you want to add some cinnamon or some allspice. Some people like black pepper, some of the ginger, lots of warming herbs there. So here is so if I were to craft a tea, this is kind of a big jar for a gift, so I might divide it into small jars later. I would want to do 1 part flowering note, and I happen to have some beautiful calendula here. So calendula is a really great wound healer, but when taken internally, it's also really good for soothing all your mucous membranes. So I'm going to do 1 flowering component there. Then I'm going to add my body. And in this case, I have a nice supply of red raspberry leaf. I grew a bunch of red raspberries this year and it never berried. I haven't mastered raspberries yet, but it did make a lot of foliage. So no problem. I'm just going to harvest all of the red raspberry leaf and dry it up because it's also valuable. So I'm going to put twice as much red raspberry in here as I did calendula. Give that a little swirl. Then I'm going to put a nice fruiting component, and I have hibiscus here, which is the flower of the hibiscus dried and chopped up. So I think I'm going to do half hibiscus and half rose hips. And I'll just show you. So right now your rose hips will look like this. Anyone who has a nice rose bush, it will be fruiting now into these hips. Some of them might already be starting to dry on the plant and look kind of wrinkly. And then others might look more like a juicy rose hip. So these are loaded with vitamin C. We really love these in tea. And to process them can be a bit tedious, but it's nice to get the seeds out because the seeds are a little bit bitter. So I would just chop open my rose hip, and then you can get a better visual on the seeds. And I would either just pick it out with my tip of my knife, or sometimes I use my finger and get it in there and get all of the seeds out. So you can see this would take a while. But again, this is sort of why gardens lend themselves to community, so that you just get some people together and make it more fun. So again, just scraping all those seeds out. And then this I can show you is a processed bunch of rose hips that has already been nicely dried up. And rose hips, you can just put on a tray and dry them, or you can put them in a dehydrator to dry them up more quickly. But here you can see there's no seeds in there. Nice dehydrated rose hips. So I'm going to do half a part hibiscus. And I might chop those a bit smaller. And then I'm going to do half a part rose hips. And again, you can work with any of these items fresh as well, just generally not what you have on hand after you've dried them up. So it's starting to get very beautiful. And then I could put a cooling note in here with, I think I'm going to put a little bit of lemon balm. And then I also really enjoy, this isn't in the basic recipe, but I really like adding licorice root as well. Here you can see, it looks very woody. And for roots, I do put them in the dehydrator because they are so woody and they take a little bit more time to get the moisture out. So I'm going to also put in half a part of licorice. So licorice is quite sweet, and I like it because it has some nice blood sugar lowering properties. And then I would think of a name for my tea and make up a nice label. And then you can gift it with reusable stainless steel tea balls, or people generally have those. So there you go. That's a nice tea blend. So here's some other recipes, and I can send the PDF to Annie and she can give it to you if you would like any of these recipes. But they're really delicious to add the tulsi in with cinnamon and ginger and licorice, all these nice warming spices into a herbal chai. You can also combine mint with tulsi and orange peel, mint and peach. I've made this delicious autumn gold tea before. So you can also put in dried turmeric into tea to give it that anti-inflammatory property and that beautiful orange color. And when you do have little nuggets of dried turmeric, because instead of using the powder, you could dry the turmeric root, and it makes these little gold flecks in the tea, which is super beautiful. Bergamot, lavender, lemon balm, and a herbal fog. So good. These are all really delicious recipes. So that's what I want to share about tea. Next, I wanted to move on. Are there any questions about tea before before we move on? Not yet. Okay, no problem. Let's move on to infusions. So earlier I mentioned that generally speaking, when somebody is asked if they'd like a cup of tea, they're checking in, do I need caffeine or not? So it's important to know that tired people need deeper nourishment, deep nourishment, not more stimulants. So that's sort of an interesting, right? Like our body isn't saying, please give me more caffeine when we're tired. It's saying, give me some really deep nourishment. So infusions are a way to achieve that. So there are 3 general uses for herbs. There's our stimulating ones like coffee, black tea, even cinnamon and ginger and cayenne. Those are also very warming and stimulating. We don't want to use them every day, ideally, but once in a while, they're okay. So overall, if they're used every day, we're actually eroding our health. Then we have our tonifying herbs, and tonifying herbs are more like exercise in that if you take a tonifying herb once, it's not going to have long-term effects for you. Similarly, if I go for 1 10-minute run, I'm not going to get the full benefits of exercise. It's something that you need to do over a prolonged period of time. So this is more of our burdocks. If you're looking at a liver tonic, our dandelions, the yellow dock and licorice and motherwort. So we would want to introduce those for a chunk of time, but not permanently, right? Like I wouldn't take motherwort every day for 6 years, just for a chunk of time. And motherwort's a really lovely herb. That's the picture in the background for the heart. So nourishing herbs, there's some violets in the background there. They're the safest of all herbs. Side effects are super rare, and you can use them just like foods like spinach and kale. So these are the herbs that provide high levels of proteins and vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and all that good stuff, essential fatty acids. And nourishing herbs are referred to as the people's medicine because they literally are weeds, and they're super nourishing. So it's really easy to grow because they grow themselves. You just need to know where to find them. So any herb that's free of poisons, and meaning that they don't have a lot of volatile oils or resins. So for example, mint has a lot of volatile oils. I wouldn't make an infusion out of mint. Okay, so any herb that doesn't have a lot of these properties and has a lot of protein, minerals, and vitamins, those are the ones you want for infusions. So nettle leaf, also known as stinging nettle, oat straw, it's literally the oats, the straw of oats, red clover blossoms, and comfrey leaf. These are 4 really wonderful allies to introduce. Okay, so different than a tea, you're not really checking in to see how you feel in the moment and what you're trying to correct short term. You're thinking more long term. So stinging nettle actually builds energy, right? You're getting energy in a different way than caffeine. We're working with the adrenal gland, our stress glands, and giving flexibility back to our blood vessels, lots of minerals in there. There's also some iron in there. So a lot of people drink nettle tea to get a plant source iron, and then lots of fat soluble vitamins too, the A, D, E, and K. So nettle is so amazing, but most people don't consume it. Oat straw is really good for the nervous system, also increases libido and strengthens the nerves, so the nervous system. And lots of calcium in there and other minerals. Really good to mellow out the mood because of its effect on the nervous system. Red clover has the phytoestrogens, and it's even better than soy for its phytoestrogen component. And it also has lots of calcium. So most people think this might be really tedious to harvest these flowers because they don't grow super densely, but it's not like you have to go out and harvest a year's supply at once. It's just whenever you see a red clover patch, you might harvest, 10 or 12 of the red clover blossoms and then pop them into your shirt pocket. And every time you see a patch, you might grab 10 or 12. And then by the end of the season, you've got a nice amount. And those I would use my drying rack to dry up the red clover flowers. Comfrey gets a lot of mixed presses. Not everyone is comfortable using comfrey. There are some species of comfrey that do have some toxins in them. So I'm talking about a very specific type of comfrey that's the one found in most of our gardens. It can grow really tall, like 2 meters, above 2 meters even, and it has pinky purpley flowers. The toxic one is a short growing comfrey and it has yellow flowers. So the tall growing comfrey that makes those pink flowers has a lot of mucilage properties in there. So it's good for the mucous membranes, which include giving flexibility to the joints, the eyes, and the lungs, and lots of calcium in there. You can use comfrey as a compress on broken bones, but you can also consume the leaf internally. I'll show you. I just clipped some comfrey from my garden today, so you can, it's so amazing that we can use this for an infusion because it's so meaty, right? Like some of these other plants are so finicky and small. You get a lot of flesh off one leaf of comfrey. And then I would just use a clothespin and a clothesline and hang my leaves in a row. Really good for menopausal women who have reduced bone density because of the calcium in there, also referred to as knit bone. So infusions, different from a tea, are a large amount of herbs steeped for a long amount of time. So this picture here is a delicious nettle infusion, and you just know that it's healthy. Look at that deep color. Other safe herbs for infusions, there's a list here. Again, I'll send this to Annie. So these are the safe ones, meaning that you can use a lot of them and steep them for a long period of time. So I'm going to walk you through making a tea versus an infusion. So my kettle boiled. So to do a tea, we'll start with a tea because that one's really easy. I'm even going to use a pre-prepared tea bag for this. So they generally, in a tea bag, there's about a teaspoon of dried herb in there. This one happens to be chamomile. So I would just pop that in. I know everybody knows this. It's just to accentuate the time. So I would just, sometimes there's instructions and it says, let it steep for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, depending upon what the herb is. But generally speaking, you only need to steep it until you've got the smell and the taste that you were looking for. If you oversteep it, a lot of the herbs will go bitter. For example, if you've ever left a mint tea bag in, it gets downright gross. So this is already there, it's done. That was less than a minute, really. And it's already good to go. Just going to put that in my compost. And then some people like to sweeten them with honey or sugar or something like that. But there you go, herbal tea, super simple. Even in this tea blend that we made earlier, I would just put a teaspoon of this mixture inside my mug and strain it out. I don't really, my supply of tea balls waxes and wanes, but sometimes I just use a strainer like this and pop it in my mug so that it's easier to strain. And then an infusion, turn my scale on. So I'm going to zero it out with this on it. And I'm going to do a nettle infusion. So I'm going to take my bag of nettles. So my iron is a bit low and my adrenal glands could use a little support. And you'll see the difference. So we're not putting a teaspoon this time. We're going to put a whole ounce. One ounce. Okay, so once you get into making infusions, you can see why it becomes a good idea to have a bigger bag of herbs supplied for you, because this is going to last me just 2 days. So I've got a nice amount of nettle, and I'm going to pop it into my mason jar. So this one's a liter mason jar or a quart. Hopefully not make too big of a mess. Very good. Beautiful. So you can see that that's a lot of herb that I'm going to be steeping. So I'm just going to fill the jar up. And you'll see a lot of the herb floats to the top. So I do want to give it a bit of a stir. Just make sure all that nice nutrition. Oh, it already smells really good. It smells healthy, earthy and healthy. And then I don't want any of the nutrition to escape and evaporate as it cools. So I am going to put, oops, not that lid. Oh, yes, this lid. I'm going to pop my lid on. And I've used a 2-part lid. You don't have to. It could be just a 1-part plastic lid. So this will, as it cools, make a seal. And then I'll have to use a can opener to pry it off after it's made its seal. So I'm going to actually let this steep on my counter overnight. So I want 4 to 6 hours of steeping. So you can see that's a lot different than a tea. So an infusion is a large amount of herb steeped for a long chunk of time. Generally speaking, I'll let it steep overnight because that's just the easiest. Otherwise, I lose track of it. So after dinner, I'll pour an ounce of herb in a jar, fill it up with water, put the lid on, and then the next day I'll strain it out. So when you're straining it, you want to make sure you get all of the goodness. So when I pour this into another mason jar and all of the spent herb shows up, I'm going to push it through the strainer to get every last bit. And it will last in the fridge for a couple of days. If you let it go any longer than that, you'll see very quickly it turns into a really wonderful plant fertilizer, which means it will start to taste gross to you and smell gross to you, but plants will love it. So anytime you don't end up drinking all of your infusion, it's going to go in the fridge after 4 to 6 hours. But if you don't end up drinking it, just dilute it a little bit and give it to your houseplants. They'll love it. And then I would do the same for my oat straw. I rotate through them. So I'll do nettle one night, oat straw the next, comfrey, and then if I have red clover, I would do red clover because I know that they're all really deeply nourishing. And after you've been drinking these nourishing herbal infusions for as little as 2 weeks, you will find your coffee intake naturally goes down. So if you are someone who wants to cut down on your coffee, you don't even have to consciously do anything. Just add the nourishing herbal infusions to your daily routine. And after 2 weeks, you'll want less coffee. Your body won't need it. Oops. What did I do? So again, I'll give you a copy of this recipe, 1 ounce. That's a lot of herb. On your kitchen scale, you're going to weigh it out. Once you get a sense of for how much 1 ounce is, you can eyeball it from then on in. But you're going to cover it with a tight lid so that nothing comes out, and let it steep for 4 to even up to 8 hours or overnight. Strain it really well, squeezing all that herb out to get all the good stuff out. Pop it in your fridge, and you can drink. I drink 3 cups a day, and I go through the jar pretty quickly. But you want to make sure you drink it all within 48 hours. That was it. So that's all I want to share about teas and infusions. I hope that you feel inspired to expand what you're taking in right now of herbs and looking at nourishment in a different way. Are there any questions at all?
Everybody's so quiet.
Yeah, that's okay. If you think of something later, like you start making your infusion and you're not sure about something, you can always reach me through any questions
Sure.
that you have at a later time as well. I'll put my email on one of the slides in the PowerPoint.
Does the infusion taste very, very strong?
Karen, did you have a question?
I did have a question. Can you tell us about sumac? Did you, you didn't hear
sumac.
me? Sumac, yes.
Okay, there were 2 questions that came in at the same time, but can you tell us about sumac? So sumac is that red bundled plant that kind of has these hairy fruits on it. And it is really high in vitamin C. And when it is flowering, my kids enjoy just picking the flowers off and eating them. They call it the lemonade plant. It's very lemony tasting, but I wouldn't make an infusion out of it. I would just steep it as a tea. So the sumac I would steep for maybe about 10 minutes, and I would put a lid on it as it's steeping because you don't want the vitamin C to become volatile and escape. And it makes really delicious tea. Have you had sumac tea before?
Not for a long time, so I wasn't really remembering when to pick the sumac, but probably right about now.
Right about now would be perfect.
Okay, and then what about cedar in tea?
Cedar, yeah. I use cedar very sparingly. I don't know if I'm the best. There are some properties of cedar which can affect your kidneys, so that's one of the toxic ones. But you can, again, similar to the sumac, you can steep it. You wouldn't put it in a pot of boiling water. You just put boiling water over it, and I wouldn't steep it for more than 5 minutes and pop it out and add a little bit of honey or something if you wanted. But cedar tea is lovely. Lovely. I would look into connecting with some of the traditional herbal wisdom keepers from First Nations. They are really the masters of cedar tea. There's a very particular way to harvest cedar, knowing which part of the tree, which direction it's facing, and not to take too much. So I'd encourage you to look that direction as well.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I love cedar tea. Mm. I think there was maybe a question about the taste of infusions. Did I hear?
Do you drink your infusion cold or warm?
You can heat it up, but I drink mine cold. Sometimes I even put ice in my. Play around because the temperature will affect the taste a lot. So I don't like nettle warm. I think it tastes a little bit gross, but I really like it cold. So I fire ice cubes in my nettle infusion. Oat straw, I could drink warm or cold, and same with the other ones, but nettle, I really enjoy cold.
Awesome.
Wonderful. And if you're looking for sources of buying herbs, I wish I had a local supplier. I'm still buying from this company in BC called Organic Matters, because I know that they have organic herbs. But if I catch wind of a local supplier of these infusion herbs, I'll pass that along too. If I dry my own, I can barely get enough for just my own personal use. Yep, wonderful. Thanks again, everyone, for coming tonight, and thank you for your questions, and thank you to everyone who's watching the recording.
Thanks again, Jennifer,
And-
for coming. Yeah, it was great. I think everybody learned a lot, and we'll see you again shortly.
Perfect. Rebecca, did you have a question, or were you?
No, I just want to say thank you very much.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome very much. Thanks so much for coming. I love your sunflower thumbnail.
Yeah, that's
Thank
nice.
From the garden.
Beauty.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Thanks for making it happen, Annie.
Okay, we'll see you.
And to the Welland Public Library.
Okay, have a good
Bye
evening,
for now.
everybody. Okay.